In this lesson, you'll work with a coding concept called functions and a related concept called methods. You'll touch on a number of concepts listed here. Here's what we'll be learning. Go ahead and navigate to repl.it/languages/python3. You should then be greeted with a screen like this one. Let's go back to our slides. First, what is a function? Think of functions you learned in math class from grade school. Functions accept some input value and return some value. For example, consider the absolute value function. It takes in a number and returns the positive version of that number. One example input is -5. We take the absolute value and the function returns +5. Let's see what these functions look like in action. In this lesson, we'll use several of these functions. So, how do I use a function? Consider the absolute value function again. In Python, the function's name is just abs. Use parentheses to call the function. Calling the function means we execute the function. In between the parentheses, add any inputs that the function needs. The absolute value function takes in just one input. We also refer to the input as an input argument, or just the argument. Other functions may take different numbers of input arguments. For example, consider the function max. This function accepts 2 input arguments and returns the larger of the 2. Again, add parentheses and the inputs. This time, use a comma to separate the 2 arguments. Let's try this now. Go ahead and type in abs and pass in the argument -5. This calls the function abs with the argument -5. The function abs will then return +5. Go ahead and now try this again with max. This time, we're going to pass in 2 arguments, 5 and 7. The function then returns the larger of the 2 values, 7. You can also open a file with a built-in function. Go ahead and type in open. The first argument is going to be the name of the file. In this case, test.txt. The second argument of w means that we're opening the file in write mode. Go ahead and hit enter. What is that gibberish? The return value is a data type we haven't seen before. To interact with this new data type, we will need to learn what a method is. Back to our slides. What is a method? Each of the data types we've talked about so far, numbers, strings, functions, these are all types of objects. And a method is a function that belongs to an object. That's 3 new words in a sentence, but this will be simpler to understand by example. So how do I use a method? In this example, we're going to split a string into a number of smaller strings. First, you need an object. Here, we have a string object. Next, add a dot. This dot means we're about to access a method for the string object. Add the method name. In this case, the name is split. This method split will separate the string into many pieces. To call this method, just like you call functions, add parentheses. In between your parentheses, add your input argument. Here are all the parts annotated. From left to right, we need the object, a period, the method name, and the input arguments. Let's try this now. Go ahead and type in the object. This is a string object. Now, we can call the method split with the argument of a comma. This will separate the string into 3 pieces by splitting the string at each comma. Hit enter, and you can now see the resulting list of 3 strings. There are other methods as well. For example, .upper. This method will uppercase all letters. Go ahead and hit enter. Now back to our file object. We can, after loading the file, use the read method to read the contents of that file. Here, we get an error because the file test.txt does not exist yet. But that's okay. Later on, we'll reuse the read function. For now, we've covered built-in functions. However, some functions are not immediately available. For example, say we want to read a web page. We would then need to import a function that reads a web page. Let's do this now. From urllib.request, import urlopen. Breaking this down, urllib.request is the name of a library. A library is a collection of Python code someone else has written that we can use. urlopen is the name of the function we want. We can use this function to open a web page. Go ahead and hit enter. Now we can use this function. We're now going to write page is equal to URL open, and then a mysterious URL. Here I'm going to actually drag this right-hand side so that the window is a little bit wider. Go ahead and hit enter. Once that's read the web page, go ahead and type in page.read. And that's a mess, but that's okay. We don't need to understand the contents of this web page just yet. Later on, we'll see how to properly read web pages so that we can actually understand the content. For now, you've covered a number of different important fundamentals in coding. We're going to use what we've learned so far to write a simple, nifty tool that reformats a list of emails into a column of emails, one email per line. Up to this point, we've been working in the Python interpreter. We type one line of code, and the interpreter immediately evaluates that line of code. Now, we're going to instead write code in a file. After writing all code and saving the file, we will then run the file. A quick note that the caret on the right is orange. This caret is now at the bottom of the screen where I've highlighted it. This orange caret means that the interpreter is waiting for our input. Later, when your nifty tool is asking for input, you can replace this orange caret with whatever text you'd like. To the left, in main.py, start by collecting the input text from the user. To do so, use the input function. Go ahead and type in input and pass in one argument. This argument can be whatever text you would like. I'm going to type in text : my string will ask for text and will end with a colon. Hit run. You will now see the string that you inputted as an argument. Notice the interpreter's orange caret is missing. This means your program is asking for input and not the interpreter. Type whatever text you would like and hit enter. Nothing much interesting happens, it seems. However, your program has finished and the interpreter's orange caret has returned. Well, where did the text go? Quite simply, the input function returned the text and our program didn't do anything with the return value. Let's fix that. Go ahead and assign the user inputted text to a variable called text. Now, we need to tell Python when to output and what to output. To do so, use the print function. Any argument that we provide to the print function will be outputted. Go ahead and type in print of text. This will output whatever the variable text contains. At the top of the web page, click on Run. Once again, you'll see the text prompt. Go ahead and type in whatever text you would like and hit enter. You'll then see that your inputted text is outputted by the program. Next, let's actually process this piece of text instead of just printing it out. Delete the last line in the file and add a new line of code. In particular, split the text by each comma by using the split function. Here we'll call text.split and we'll split at every single comma. Assign the result to a variable called emails. Again, our goal is to output a list of emails in a column where every email is on its own line. First, we'll need the character corresponding to a line break, which is a \n. Next, we'll use the join method for this string. The join method accepts a list of emails and inserts the line break between every pair of emails. Finally, assign the resulting string to a variable named output. For our last line of the program, output the newly formatted string with one email per line. We're now done with the program. Go ahead and hit run. Type in a list of emails, hit enter, and ta-da, we get a reformatted list of emails where we have one email per line. You've learned a lot in this lesson, as usual. This is a quick summary of the concepts you've touched on: calling functions, calling methods, and importing functions. If you'd like to access and download these slides, or view completed code for the example in this lesson, visit this URL. You can now perform advanced data modifications. But what if you want a custom function? In the next lesson, you'll define your first functions.